Welcome. Today I have with me a guest, Candace Wright, and I'm happy to get that right. I messed it up way too many times, particularly because I know how to say the name better. And she's the Director of Programs with Solar Youth. She's new in the position, in that position. She's been with Solar Youth for a while. And I wanted to talk to her about what it is for her to be in that position, what's going on with Solar Youth, and just find out a little bit about who she is. So, Candace, why don't you introduce yourself to the audience watching?
My name is Candace Wright, and yes, as Senator Winfield mentioned, I am the Interim Executive Director as of now. This is very new for me. Probably about 6 months or so officially, but I've been with Solar Youth almost 13 years. Wow, when I say that out loud, it kind of rings a little bit. Like I started at Solar Youth, I think when I was in my early 20s, like 24.
Okay, good. So that's a little bit of the way this works is, you could go on forever once you start who a person is. So I've set myself to a 10-question limit, and hopefully we can get some real exploration on Solar Youth and Candace. So first question. I believe that things happen for a reason, and that people tend to be in places for a reason. So the first question for you is, why is Candace in this position right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. I honestly feel like this is, destiny. I'll never forget, I think I shared with you a little bit of my story, but I'm born and raised from New Haven. I had a career in fashion before my work with Solar Youth. Was totally different than what I'm doing now. And I was working in New York for this hosiery company, doing my dream. I had a boutique in New Haven before this job, sold that business, moved to New York, and I was living my dream. And I just got really burnt out after the hustle and bustle of being in New York City. And I remember I hadn't talked to my father in some years, and he was like, "You should just come home." And when he said that, it really rung in my heart. If anybody knows my dad, he's a minister. He's very intentional with his words. And when he said it, I felt that in my soul. And I did. I came back home and was looking for jobs, couldn't find a job for months. I mean, it was, I thought there was something wrong with me. And I remember I was getting so weary and thinking about I should go back to New York because it's taking too long. I needed to find work. And the day I was going to go back, I received a call or an email from the assistant there and from the previous executive director, Joanne Scully, founder. And I was like, okay, this must be a sign from God. Maybe I'll get a job. I took a taxi from the train station, and the taxi driver was very uncomfortable. And that was making me a little uncomfortable. Living in New York, something's happening. Let me ask him a few questions. And I remember he was saying something like, "Do you know where you're going?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I gave you the address." And I remember pulling up in the neighborhood, Westville Manor, and I literally took this deep breath, and I said to myself, "Oh, okay, God, you're funny. Like this is it." I hadn't been back. I grew up in foster care in that neighborhood. Wow, me and my sister years ago, I had not been back to that neighborhood since I was probably 10. And I never even thought about it again. Once you leave that, I left that place and I left it all there. And I was like, oh, okay, this is what I'm meant to do. And from that moment, I had no doubts. I went into my interview with Joanne, and she had this very warm smile. And I could tell she'd never seen such stark, I don't know how else to say this. This is not to like make myself sound conceited, but beauty. She was like, whoa, like I had this big afro. I mean, I was doing the thing. And she was like, it's nice to meet you. Tell me more. And from there, we just chatted. And I just remember her saying, you know, Candace, I do have another candidate that's definitely probably, you know, more qualifications, you know, why should I choose you? And I was like, oh, why not me? And I think we both looked at each other and I was like, if you're taking me on, you're getting the hardest working learner that you'll ever receive and the most constant person in your corner. And I think from there, it was a no-brainer. It was a winner.
Wow. I love the why not me. I love that. We're going to get a little bit into Solar Youth itself. And so just before we get too deep into that, my question for you is, now that you have this job and even what you were doing prior at Solar Youth, is there something you wish you had known before you took the position that might have been helpful, that might have been something you would want to know?
Man. So I'm trying to think about this for a second. Something I wish I would have known. Honestly, I came to Solar Youth when honestly, it was the first, you hear the word not for profit, but you really don't understand what that means. I'm like, not for profit, yay, do good. And so when I took the position, I just assumed that because we were doing good, everyone understands all the challenges that we struggle with as human beings. Everyone is woke. Everyone checks their privilege at the door. People get it. Solar Youth is in a very high risk population serving in New Haven, and I would say urban neighborhood, but it's a development, what we used to call project, right? And so I just assumed that everyone got it. It was like I expected, like like when I see people of color that look like me, or we do the nod, I just assumed Black, white, everybody, you got it. And it was gonna be like a given. And then day by day, I realized, oh, I'm gonna have to explain what, being Black is in America. Oh, I'm gonna have to code switch and figure out how to navigate these situations. I had not done that kind of internal work since I was in high school. I went to an all-girls high school, Sacred Heart Academy. I had not been just like head on in my face dealt with that kind of how do you show up and be you every day. I just didn't know that was going to be a real thing. And so that definitely took me back. It definitely took me back.
So that's interesting. So we have why not me? And then we have the discovery of the need to code switch and some other things. So I imagine that given what the job itself is, it's difficult on a deeper level than just going to work and having a difficult job, right? So tell me about, is there a time or an experience doing this where the person who said, why not me, says, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do this, and how you still remain here now?
There's so many, right now I say that there's stories that made me. Like there's so many stories I could share. But I think there was a moment, I think that I would share. Joanne was going on vacation and I had these lists of things to do. I mean, the list in nonprofit work, it's a joke, right? We always say, we have so much work, it never ends. We keep doing more work. And I remember she left and the list was endless. And I don't know why in my mind, I thought, oh, I got this. you got this, no problem. And I remember taking little like lunch breaks, which I never took before, to, sit and relax and take it in. And as I was thinking of that, I remember when she came back, she was like, what's up? Like, nothing was finished, like everything was kind of awry. And I think in that one instance, she was like, if you're gonna like step up and do this job, like you gotta do it now. Like, because if not, and I remember in that moment thinking like, oh, this is this woman, a white woman, really checking me at the door with, and I didn't really know how. And then I started thinking, is this really what I want to do? Because I don't have to deal with any of this. And in that subtle moment, I just remember this great humbling come over me and said to myself, if I want to do this work, I'm going to have to humble myself so that I can learn from all kinds of people. And that was big for me. I had real big pride coming from New York, thinking I knew exactly what to do. No one's going to tell me what to do. I got this. And I was quickly in that moment, I was really just like, oh, I've got a lot to learn. And so that was definitely different from me, having that experience.
Right. So you're Solar Youth, right? That's where you are, and there's a vision for what Solar Youth is and does. Can you talk to me about, you talked about nonprofits and the things you discovered. Can you talk to me about maybe some of those things that are the barriers to getting to where you need to get with the organization, to achieving the vision that Solar Youth has for itself and that you as the executive director have for it?
Yeah, there's so many, but I think I'll start with just a few things. One is just getting people to understand the work that we do, especially at Solar Youth. Now that I've been in this for almost 13 years, I've made relationships with many people in this work. And one of the things that's kept me at Solar Youth is it's just this drive to show up and meet kids right where they're at. The work that we do is really transformational. And I know this firsthand. When I meet with staff and hear stories about, today there was a young lady in program and she lost her brother to gun violence, and I had to get on my knees and get under the table and look her in the eyes and really like be with her. This is an after school program doing this work, right? And so I really think the first thing for people to really understand is that youth development work is anti-poverty work. And I know that that's a big statement, like, whoa, what are you saying? But it really is, all the things that we teach young people about how to just be, skill sets for interviewing. I mean, we're doing all kinds of work, from giving them job skills, internships, teaching them how to be a good steward in their community, how to be restorative, nonviolent communication. I think about that educator in that story. If he didn't learn those skills of how to be nonviolent and to like meet her where she's at and have those skill sets, I wonder what impact he would have had in her life. And so that's really the first thing, understanding and getting donors and funders to really understand, like, this is who you're giving to, sorry, Gary, were you going to, Senator, were you going to say something? Okay.
Gary works perfectly fine for me.
Okay.
I thought you were pausing, so I was
I was pausing. And I think so from that, I would say, then there's the obvious. Funding is our biggest need. It's not just the funding, but it's getting consistent funding and also making those connections to new funders and donors. Foundations change, people change their directive every year. And I just really want I never really feel like a scarcity in that sense of like, oh, where's the money? Where's the money? But for some reason in this work, just really getting people to understand who do have money to impact change, that this is why you give and you can give now. Right. I think the last thing I would say is just really understanding, right now, just the impact you're having on young people's lives and how much, I know it's cliche to say like young people are the future, but as I sit here, talk to you and say, oh, wow, I've been at Solar Youth almost 13 years and I'm 37. I'm already thinking about who's going to come after me and what legacy am I going to leave? And I think just being in this work right now is really transformational.
Wow. Well, thinking about legacy, I think is critical, and too many people and organizations don't do that. So I applaud you for that. You mentioned the young people, right? And one of the things that I'm curious about is, you said people have to know what it is you all do. And part of that is dealing with these young people. And I think there are a lot of stories and myths about our youth. And you've been dealing with young people who haven't had the opportunities they probably should have, and haven't been able to access all that would allow them to operate in their fullness. And at the same time, those myths are out there about those young people. So can you talk a little bit about that myth versus the reality of these young people that that you have come to know doing this work, and what that myth that kind of becomes the reality for some of us, at least perception wise, of what we see when we see one of these young people, and how it factors into your work?
Yeah. I have to say, Senator Winfield, your questions are real, and I love this. And I really it makes me go, And I hope that anyone who's watching this will be taking that breath with me. I think back to, and I'm gonna try to keep this a really short story. I listened not too long, a few years ago, I did this training with Community Foundation CIO, Dr. Joy DeGruy. Google her if you need to. Powerful person, talks about post-traumatic slave syndrome, and more. And so I'm thinking, I'm listening to her. I'm like, what is she gonna say that I don't know, but I'm interested? Tell me more, because I'm very aware of race, class, privilege, etc. And she told this story about this after school program that she was teaching young people. And they were doing like a gold star system. You showed up, you did your homework, they were check. And one of her students, still to this day makes me laugh, stood up and was kind of like, I don't give a hootenanny about the star. I show up, Miss Joy, because of you.
Wait. Like, they said hootenanny? They said hootenanny?
Yes, yeah. I'm saying hootenanny because I can't say what he really said.
I'm just
I want to keep it PG. But she said that and she started laughing, and I was like, okay, tell me more, because that's what I've done in school. You get the A's for doing great work, you get the gold stars, you get the high honors. And she took me back in history, and she was like, when he said that really captured me. And she really began to talk about Black people and our story of being storytellers and honoring one another as a people, honoring, the people who are leading you forward, your family, your mentors. That's who these young people are wanting to impress. And so I think the biggest myth about Black young youth is that they know real from real a mile away, and they know real from real because it's in their DNA. And that if you can connect with them and see them for who they are, a human being just like you, with, probably I even say most of them are probably smarter than me, right? And listen, you've got a friend for life. You've got a person who wants to be right next to you, and the learner for life. That to me is, I don't know, just very moving, very moving.
Yeah. The reason I'll tell you the reason I asked the question. So, you know, I was a Boy Scout. Went into the military. I'm pretty much like straight narrow guy. But so in my life, people have seen me a lot different than a lot of the people that I grew up around, right? In that housing project in the Bronx. And I've always found this curious because I'm not different in almost any way, except a couple of fortunate things happened in my life. And a couple of those fortunate things are that I didn't get into certain fights, or that I exploded on one day versus the other day. But I walked around with many of the same traumas that the other people who are around me walked around with. And I always find it so interesting the way we talk about some people because of how that trauma manifests in their lives and how a certain situation happens for them versus another person. And so I get to be the guy who's, you know, concerned about what I'm doing and doing the right things because I've cared and something apparently went right for me. And this other person who, you know, showed up in a space on a day that I didn't show up in a space and blew up, right? Because of that trauma, doesn't care and doesn't have good parents and all of that stuff, but we're not different, right? And so, you know, I'm very concerned about the things that we tell ourselves about these young people who may not be doing all that we want them to do, because I don't think many of the stories show an understanding of what these young people experience and the types of trauma that they live with, the incidences that even some adults would be crippled by. So
absolutely.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say absolutely. I mean, it just makes me go back to, you know, a steward, you know, is 12 years old and my staff is getting on the floor talking to her about grief as she just lost her close family member. I think it was her brother. And, you know, in that moment, he could have decided, well, we're just going to keep moving with program and we're just going to keep going forward. But in that moment, he was like, no, you know, they continue to prioritize the young people. And I'm so glad that, you know, he had the knowledge and like, okay, how do I handle this? You know, how do I meet her where she's at and continue to help her in this moment and then follow up with her about what's needed next steps. It's real. The trauma that young people are experiencing today, especially now, it is heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And I know we in nonprofit, we like to say the word resilience a lot, but I wish I had a better word for resilience. These are superhumans. The amount of trauma that the stories that I can share from a 10-year-old and what they've experienced in their life in the last, I mean, even the pandemic alone, the last few years would absolutely, like you said, would cripple some adults, and yet they still show up and rise every day.
I just want maybe I should be cautious not to push back a little bit on my own guess, but you know, I'm a little circumspect about using the term superhuman because what I know is for myself, right? While on the surface it looks a certain way, in my life for real, what I experienced a lot of damage, and it looked like, wow, you could just keep going no matter what, right? We get to that resilience term or superhuman, but what you all are doing by engaging with these young people doesn't happen for all of us, right? And I was fortunate as I got older to get myself some therapy and to deal with and become able to access a whole spectrum of emotions I couldn't access, but I was functioning but not whole, right? So even those young people who make it, who seem to do everything, oftentimes there's still a lot of damage there that manifests itself in other ways, and not necessarily the criminality, but things like, you know, when I'm thinking about having a child, I'm like, I don't know that I don't know that I'm capable of having a child because I haven't dealt with certain things. And even having that presence in mind is advanced, right? Because you may not even think about it because you've always been in this space. So anyway, I don't need to go too much into myself, but I just
That's
really,
real, and I'm glad you shared that. No,
yeah.
sorry, Senator, go ahead.
No, listen, we're having a conversation. I really appreciate the work that you all are doing, because without you there is a gap, right?
Right.
And whether you touch one person or 15 people, that's a couple of people who've been touched by you and whose lives are changed forever in ways that they can't even know, right? And so that's what's important to me, and part of the reason I'm talking to you right now. And in that vein, to keep moving on with our questions, I guess, listening to this, right? Just an average person, how do they help out? What can they do?
I think the first thing people can do, and I mean, I'm trying to keep it like kind and loving, but
we're real here now.
Yeah, so I honestly, I mean, I guess I'm going to tell this story. I'm in this wonderful group called Cause Effective, and it's a fundraising group for people of color, and that's a whole big conversation. But one of the women in the group, her name is Sakawis, and she's Native American. And we were kind of asking her, like, how are you getting all these asks? And she's just doing it. And she's like, because I just know that the time is now. She's like, I see it as, and this is really bold. We were all like standing like this. So I'm prefacing. I see this as reparations. And when she said that, the whole room was silent. And there was a whole dialogue that continued. And so I'm saying that to say the first thing people can do is give. It's, we always have good intentions of why we're going to give, when we're going to give, and then things happen. But I do believe that people will surprise you if you ask them to show up. I've seen communities raise tons of money at the speed of lightning. And I just honestly, I mean, you'll be surprised. I honestly believe the first thing people can do is give, and not only give, but give with the intention of knowing that you're going to tell someone else, connect to someone else that can do the impact, whether you want it to your best friend, is looking to donate to somewhere, speak to them as well. I've just found in New Haven, especially, there are people that are just, we all know each other. Like I find I run into people that really know each other, and yet we don't know each other, but we know each other. And so I think that's the first thing people can do. And just from there, really just start really thinking about what is the change that you want to leave in this world, and how do you do that?
Good. So we know each other, but we don't know each other.
Yeah.
So let's help the audience know you a little more. So tell me something you've read or something you've heard that inspires you.
Something I read or something okay. This is a good question. Okay. I think something that inspires me is something that I stick with me. It's probably been with me for a few years now. My pastor, Bishop Elliott, I talk to him, and he does a lot of listening. And so when I talk to him and when he speaks, it's something that you're listening. And I don't want to say the word wrong, so I'm going to just read it. It's a scripture that I really hold dear to my heart. It's Proverbs 3. Let not mercy and truth forsake thee. Bind them about thy neck, write them upon the table of thine heart. So shalt thou find favor and good understanding in the sight of God and man. And that has been something that I have carried with me. Like, no matter how many challenging conversations I have, no matter how many donors I'm speaking to about why they should give to youth and getting them to understand, where they live and where I work and all those things, I really try to carry mercy and truth with me in everything that I do, so that I can really meet any person right where they're at. I really feel like that has given me great wisdom. I don't know. And I wish I could go deep, but I've just really kept that with me. And I think that has kept me in this work for so many years, that right there.
Wow. So you mentioned the person, and maybe that person is part of the answer to this next question, but it's about the people that have been inspirational, impactful in your lives. And we could ask that question open-ended, but I'm going to limit you to two people.
Two people? Oh,
two people. I know it's hard.
it's hard.
Who are two people that have had a real impact on you and that in some ways make you the person that is presented here today?
Okay. Well, yes, I'll leave it at that. My pastor, Bishop Larry Elliott, I've known him since I was probably like 9 years old. I mean, and he's just that dude. Everybody that I know knows him as just that dude. And I've just never seen somebody live and embody like what they believe in. He reminds me of like Martin Luther King mixed with Malcolm X, like knows when to speak, when spoken to, knows when to use wisdom, when not to speak. I mean, just knows when to speak the word and when to just pray, knows when to, just love on somebody and forget the agenda that we came here with today. He just does that. And it's so inspiring. He used to be the executive director for community action agency in Meriden for almost 30 years. And just to see a man be celebrated, not just from that organization, but from his community. Like they have a Larry Elliott Day, like that I went to, and like, because I'm telling you, he's just that dude. Like I have never met anyone like it. And I mean, he has 7 daughters. They're my best childhood friends all my life. We're still best friends. And, let me give you an example, Senator. Like I texted him today and I was like, Pastor, I have this interview, please pray for me. And I start giving him all these words of what I need. And he just texts me back, you will, if I was like, I want to answer in love and wisdom, and I want to make sure I'm present. And he just wrote back, you will, if you believe it, I'm convinced. And I'm just like, okay. And I write back, well, when you are, I know you touch God and I believe God, so shall it be. And he writes back, amen. Like, I just imagine that if the presence of God was sitting with me, that's exactly how endearing yet straightforward and kind it would be.
And nothing more needed to be said, right?
Nothing else needed to say. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'll be great. So that's exactly what I went for. So yeah, that's definitely someone that still inspires me, motivates me. Second person. Okay, yeah, the second person I would say would definitely be my grandmother, Helen Bolden Jones. My grandmother adopted me when I was about 10. And there's so many wonderful things I could say about her. But as I think on her, I'm not going to cry. It's just emotional. That woman just taught me how to value people for who they are. Like, I mean, it's just this deep, I don't know, it's like unconditional love, generation after generation. Times when I would go to her and complain about my father. He did this and he did that and why he's going. And she would just look at me and be like, and yet he's still your father. I'm looking at her like, what? Like, what are you saying? Like, did you hear what I just said? And as I'm older now, I could just really understand the wisdom in that. Like, and yet he's still your father. And yet she's still your mother. And when I hear that word, I hear it as like, and yet, even for the least of mine, they're still who they are. And I see her really do that from every single person. She lives right on Orchard Street, and I mean, lived there for almost, 30 years, and every person knows her, and she respects and honors every single person. And I don't know how she does it a lot of the times, but it has really given me that grace and I guess grace. She just got that grace. Yeah.
Oh, that's beautiful. And listen, it's all right to cry. It took me a long time.
I know. Look, I got my situation over here just in case.
I say it took me a long time to be strong enough not to pretend like I was strong, right? And to be able to cry and let people see that in public. So if that's what happened, let that people need to know you can be powerful and cry. They need to know that. Yeah. So
absolutely.
Pretty open-ended question. If you were conducting an interview, what would you ask that I haven't?
I mean, you these questions are on point. I don't think there's anything that I wouldn't necessarily ask. I guess I want to ask you a question, if that's okay. I know that's big.
You can do that.
But because I really don't think I would have asked myself anything else. Just knowing me, I just feel like everything is connected. Anything that I said really answers my story. I would ask, why are you doing this? I mean, I told my husband, I was like, the senator is going to interview. He was like, what? he just what? Was like, what's happening? and he was like, why? And I was trying to give him like all the statistics of what a senator does and what. And then I was like, that's an honest question. Like, why are you doing this interview with me? Why are you taking the time out on the holiday week on a Monday night to sit down with Candace from New Haven to have a conversation about, giving to youth and nonprofit work? Like, I still am kind of like, and why is he doing this?
Yeah, I think story is important. And you said earlier that something to the effect of we know people, but we don't know them. And you are touching youth, right? You are touching our youth in a way that most of us don't touch them. And I think it's important for people not just to know, well, this is the bullet point of what Solar Youth does, but because you are there in this moment, Solar Youth is a thing, right? When Ken was there, it was a thing, and now you're there and it's a thing, and they are connected. But I think the leadership changes what is the organization, whether we admit to that or not, right? What you hold dear to becomes a part of what the organization does. Of course, it mixes with the mission, but I think it's important that people understand that with you there, it is. And so I ask you questions to explore more about who you are and to understand your story. I also think sometimes we just are so busy that we don't have the time to find out, right? Everybody's not going to go sit down with you. I know I have a platform. Where people will pay attention. And I was curious, what is the story? What is it that makes you the person who should be there? As I said, I believe that people are in a space for a reason. So what is it that makes you the person that should be there? I wanted to know, and I wanted other people to know. So I said, hey, I was talking to you about, hey, what you doing? I really like to tell stories. I do photography, right? Part of the reason I do photography is to tell stories, not just to take pretty pictures, but to tell a story. I think there's so many amazing stories, so many stories that we just miss. And I'm a storyteller, right, in various ways. And this is one way that I can do it. So let's tell your story. That's what this was about. So
yeah, I feel that. I feel that in my heart. And I love that you said you're a photographer, because as I was getting ready for this, my husband's a photographer, and he was all freaking out. The lights need to be this, because you got to tell the story. And I'm like, what is happening?
Well, you can tell my life set up right? Like,
yeah, everything. If you knew the situation that was happening behind this iPad right now, so, oh no, right. I just appreciate you saying that. That really, it's a big transition, and I know a lot of people are curious. So, okay, who is this person? What work is she doing? And I'm really inspired. I mean, I definitely didn't get here by myself. I have a really close relationship with the founder, Joanne Scully. She's been doing this work for so many years, coaching me along the way. And I have an amazing team of staff, board of directors that they just keep pushing. They're the most amazing problem solvers that I have ever met. And just enormous amount of resilience. And I mean, we're such a small team, but when I think about a team of 5-6 people and the amount of stuff we do is mind blowing. So I'm just really grateful for the support, and that's got me here today. I really am.
Well, we're at the last question.
Okay, last question.
So the last question is a perspective question. So final question. I think that justice and love are intimately connected, and that we will have conversations that we use those words, but we don't really explore deeper what those words mean. So I want you to talk to me about justice and love and what they have to do with what you are doing. And I will just say, because we just lost Bell Hooks, the Bell Hooks, just a quote from Bell Hooks: "The practice of love offers no place of safety. We risk loss, hurt, pain. We risk being acted upon by forces outside of our control." So when I'm thinking about love, I'm thinking about love kind of like Bell talks about. So if you could just talk a little bit about what it has to do with what you're doing.
Love Bell Hooks. Thanks for bringing that. She's amazing. I would say that, I mean, it just goes back to what I was talking about earlier. I think everything we do at Solar Youth is just that, about love and justice. I mean, we really try to meet the youth where they're at. They can show up and be themselves. They know that this is a safe space. We're not asking them to be someone else. We could, again, I talked earlier about our partnership with Elm City Communities. We are in the neighborhood. They've given us in-kind space for years. And it's intentional. It's intentional to be present in their neighborhood and to be with them. And I just feel like showing up for them every day, knowing that we're not going anywhere, is just that, loving them right where they're at and letting them see that they can be anything they want to be. And I guess I will add too that we're just not an organization that gives up on young people. Trust me, they've made boo-boos just like we all make boo-boos. And the door is always open for them to come back, second, third, fourth, fifth chance. And I think that is definitely where justice comes in. We have, I remember Joanne went to speak on a lot of youth's behalf as far as the juvenile justice system, letting them know of the great internships that they've done with us, if and when they, got in trouble and things like that. Just let people see that they're not just their problem, but they are more than that. These are the things that they do in their community. And so I really do feel, and it may sound a little weird, but when I think about, again, the mercy and the truth, it goes hand in hand with love and justice. And the work that we do is just that. I feel like that's the reason why we're still existing after 20 something years. It's because of that.
All right. Wow. Thank you for giving me some of your time. I hope that anybody that watches this feels like they know you a little better. I also hope they contribute.
I hope they contribute. Yeah. I hope they contribute. And I hope they contribute however they can, with space, with time, with finances, with connections, all of that. You'll be surprised that one conversation can change everything. So I really believe that. So yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Having this conversation.
I know.
But
I know.
I this was great, right? I feel like I know you a little bit better. I feel like the young people who are in your hands for whatever amount of time are in good hands. And that's important to me. The work that I do is really at its about young people. So thank you for the work that you have chosen to do. Thank you for staying there. I know it's not easy. And I'm hoping that I'm talking to you for a long time, doing amazing work with our young people. So thank you. And maybe we'll have you back in the future, right? I think there are maybe 10 more questions I can probably get out of you.
That would be awesome. Like, honestly, I would love to do, I know we talked earlier about stories. If we could keep this going, like you interview me again in a few months, I interview you. I could, who do I need to interview in your circle who I think I know, but I don't know? Like that.
I'll tell you this, you interview me, we probably are crying.
I'm ready. And honestly, I think just this platform that you took and just to tell a story like this, like mine, there's so many more people who would want to know, not just about me, but our youth. Imagine you answering questions from our youth. Like they got some questions. And they come with the realness, so
set it up.
I will set it up, and they are ready. I mean, because for them too, like, what does a senator do? And who is this guy? And it would really change their lives to be able to be seen and be heard, and to hear from you and other people in your circle. I just wanted to say, Senator, before we go, thank you. I wish I had a stronger word for thank you, but I really appreciate you taking this time. And I also just recognize all the work that you have done in the city of New Haven. I remember when you were alderman, and I followed your career for a long time. And
I wasn't an alderman. I was a rep before. I was a rep.
A rep. That's right. A rep. Exactly.
It's all right.
And so
we'll just mash it on.
It's all together. But I remember you were a rep, and I was thinking to myself, who is this young Black guy? I need to know him. And I need to know. And I used to get like all these things in the mail, and like I actually would read them. And then to see, I would read them. And to see now just all the work you've done for New Haven, young people, being advocate for organizations like Solar Youth, you could be spending your time doing a lot of other things, is just mind-blowing, man. Yeah. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do all that you do, but just know that there are people really, really rooting for you. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And I'll just end it by answering how it's done. I asked you that question about love because that's the source of my ability to do all of the things that I do. So.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.
Did it.
You have a lovely night.
You too.
Bye.